Hello and welcome to this first lecture of a new section on communication and storytelling in this course, Master in Business Analytics. So, the purpose of this section is to give you an in-depth view of how to master communication and storytelling. And we will talk of few things there, and one of the things that we will touch in this lecture in little more detail is how to translate data insights into actionable recommendation for your stakeholders. So, mastering communication and storytelling involves a few things. It involves you to learn how to translate data insights into actionable recommendation for stakeholders, about which we will talk about in this remaining lecture. Also, it involves the storytelling, also involves focusing on simplifying complex data using visuals and narrative. So, these are the two elements of storytelling. Then you need to have good presentation skills where you need to develop the ability to communicate findings effectively, especially to the non-technical audiences because they won't understand most of your jargons, right? And then practice creating concise reports and impactful dashboards. So those are the abilities of presentation that you need to have to be able to master communication and storytelling. So, question is, let's get on with this. The first question, how to translate data insights into actionable recommendations for your stakeholders? Any thoughts? So, translating data insights into actionable recommendations for stakeholders is an important skill for any data professional. And this involves turning technical findings into understandable, impactful, and business relevant recommendations that stakeholders can act upon. Now, how can you do that? How can you turn the technical findings into understandable, impactful, and data relevant recommendations? Is what that we will talk about in the remaining part of this lecture. Right. So, let's take a look at this. So you need to start by understanding your stakeholders. And what are the things that you need to do in this understanding? First, identify their goals. Understand what stakeholders are trying to achieve. Are they focused on increasing revenue, improving customer retention, or reducing cost, or whatever their goals are? Also, know their background because you will need to tailor your recommendation based on your audience familiarity with the data. And in the whole presentation or communication, you need to avoid jargon if they lack technical expertise and address their concerns, frame insights to align with their priorities, such as key performance indicators, etc. etc. Having understood, you need to contextualize the data insights. And for that, what you need to do is to provide business context by explaining how the data analysis relates to business problem, right? Say, for example, you could have an insight saying the sales has dropped by 15% in the last quarter. And there you need to provide the context and say that this decline coincides with the introduction of a competitor's new product. So that's how you need to provide the business context. Also, important thing to contextualize is to highlight the trends. Now, use trends and patterns, uh, to provide a narrative. Say, for example, you could be providing such a trend like saying that the customer churn is the highest among users who have not interacted with the product in last 30 days. So you need to contextualize the data insights in this manner. Then use clear and concise communication while communicating. Keep it simple. Focus on the what, why, and how. Avoid overloading with too much technical detail. And also visualize data effectively and use tools like Tableau, Power BI, or Excel to create visuals such as bar charts, heat maps, or line graphs, and highlight the most important data points using annotations or callouts. And say, for example, you could, instead of showing the table of raw numbers, present a trend line that clearly shows a revenue dip. So use clear and concise communication methods. Then you need to structure your recommendations where there are few things you need to do. First is to organize your informations logically. Use the pyramid principle where that for which with which you can start with the key recommendation for or the insight, support it with the major findings, and provide a detailed analysis as much as required. Right? Then use actionable language. Make your recommendations as specific and measurable as possible. Say, for example, instead of saying improve customer engagement, say launch an email campaign targeting customers who haven't made a purchase in last 90 days. So as specific as possible is the key thing. Then you need to prioritize recommendation, right? And then use a framework like impact versus effort metrics that you see here to highlight quick wins versus the long term projects. So structure recommendations in this manner. So tell a story with your data. And to do that, what you need to do is to first craft a narrative with the introduction, use a storytelling approach. In the introduction, state the business problem, then present the insights and their implications in the body, and conclude by proposing recommendations and their expected impact. Say, for example, you could be saying something like this that our analysis shows that 60% of customers churn within the first 3 months due to lack of onboarding. A step by step onboarding guide can potentially reduce churn by 25%, leading to an additional 500,000 US dollars in revenue annually. So, that, like this, you need to tell a story with your data. While communicating, quantify the business impact, and a few things you can do is to show the return on investment, express insight in terms of financial or operational gains. Say, for example, reducing shipping delays by 10% can save 200,000 US dollars annually, and that's much more impactful way of communicating. Also, forecast scenarios. Provide potential outcomes based on your recommendations. Say, for example, you could say that if we increase marketing spend by 20%, we could achieve a 15% increase in new customer acquisition. So, like this, you need to quantify the business impact. Facilitate stakeholder buy-in, and how can you do that? You can do by doing three things. First, engage stakeholders early, share initial findings and incorporate the feedback from your stakeholders into your findings. Prepare for questions by anticipating questions or pushback and have evidence-based answers ready. And provide alternatives where you offer multiple solutions with pros and cons, allowing stakeholders to make informed decisions. Use effective tools and format. Now, what are these tools and formats you can use? For tools and presentation, you can use PowerPoint for where you can create clean, concise slides summarizing key insights, or dashboards where you can use Tableau, Power BI, and provide interactive visuals for exploration. In terms of formats, you could use start with executive summary, one pager with key points, then detailed reports, include the in-depth analysis of the technical audience, and also you could provide workshops or QA sessions where you discuss insights in an open forum. So these are the things that you can do for effectively using tools and formats. Let's take a look at an example of translating insights. Let's say the insight is that customers aged 18 to 25 have a 35% higher likelihood of buying during online flash sales. So that's your insight from your data analysis, right? Based on that, you need to form a recommendations, and your recommendation could look like this. You could say that increase flash sales targeting this demographic, leveraging social media and tailored ads for their interest. And then you could say that doing this would result in a business impact of 20% increase in flash sales revenue, contributing an additional 100,000 per quarter. Then you need to follow up and measure results. Three things you can do again. One is to track the outcomes where you measure the success of your recommendation against your KPI. Iterate by using feedback from implementation to refine future recommendations. and communicate results by sharing how your recommendations have positively impacted the business. So, having looked at how to translate data insights into actionable recommendation for stakeholders, what do we do next? We will now look at how to simplify complex data using visuals and narratives. So, thank you so much for watching this first lecture on communication and storytelling in this course, Mastering Business Analytics. I hope you continue to learn new things, continuing to enjoy, and I do look forward to see you again in the next lecture. Please feel free to message me if you have any questions. I'll be happy to answer your questions and do download the PDF file to take a look at anything that you need to.